Hello everyone, so today we're going to talk about the history of the Romina dolls. Now this is a video that was suggested on my community to do, so we're going to do it today. So first of all, I'm going to talk about the Marie Anne Goats dolls. These actually came out before the Rominas. So these are dolls with painted eyes, and they have like a similar face mold to the Rominas. And they were made in 1983. And these dolls were made right before the Rominas, and they were limited edition of, I think, 250 dolls of each, or like 300 or so. So they made like quite a few, but not a whole lot of those, of each of those dolls. And they had either a closed mouth or an open mouth with teeth. And those were limited edition dolls, and they had certificates, and they were signed, and all that stuff. And those dolls came out right before these in 1984. So in 1984, goats were like, well, the Marie Anne goats dolls were pretty popular, so let's make playline versions. So the Romina is a playline version of the Marie Anne goats doll. So this is a playline version of that doll. So these are playline versions of the Marie Anne Goats dolls. So this one is, according to Goats Wiki number 5, Romina number 5. This one is Romina number 1 according to Goats Wiki. And according to Goats Wiki, this one is number 8. So these are my Romina dolls. And the Romina dolls, I believe, were also limited in production because goats obviously kept changing the meat outfits a lot on these dolls. So even though they made a lot of the same dolls over and over again, they changed the meat outfits so frequently that you could say that they were still limited edition. But I can't say how many of each doll were produced because nobody really knows. But it's very possible that only 250 or 300 of each, same as the original Marie Anne goats. So I'm basing that on the original dolls that came before them. It's very possible that they had the same limited edition of the 300 or so, or 250 or whatever. They had like a limited run of each doll, because they kept changing the meat outfits. So you may be able to get two of the same doll, but it may be in different meat outfits because of the way they were making them. So that may have been the case because they would change the meat outfits so frequently on these dolls that they had, I think, at least 34 different versions of Rominas out there. But there were only like, I think, let me think, how many different combinations did they actually make? Let me think. There is brown eyes with brown hair. So there's regular brown eyes with brown hair. There's brown eyes with amber eyes. There's blonde eyes with blue eyes. And then there's blonde hair with brown eyes. So that's combination number 4. There's red hair with brown eyes. Combination number 5. And then there's the boy dolls. So they only had like 6 different dolls, but they would change the meat outfits so frequently that they ended up with like 34 different meat outfits. So they had 6 different dolls with 34 different meat outfits. So that is really interesting in that sense. So they had only 6 different Romina dolls, but they had 34 different meat outfits. And my goal is to actually get all 6 of the different Romina dolls so that I could have a complete collection of Rominas. But the blonde with brown eyes and the red hair with brown eyes is really hard to get. The boy, not as much, but it's still pretty hard to get the boy. So we'll see. But it is my goal to honestly have all 6 combinations. But I don't know if I'll get all the meat combinations because that's a lot of dolls. But we'll see. Sorry about the burp. But we'll see there. But they did make a lot of different dolls, which is really interesting. Now, the next dolls that came out right after the Romina were called the Somina. Now, the Somina, they came out with 5 different dolls, and they all had different meat outfits, but there were only really 2 combinations. There was brown hair with brown eyes, which they made 4 different ones like that, and then they made one with blonde hair and blue eyes. But they had 5 different meat outfits. So there was that. Oh, wait. Actually, they also had brown hair with amber eyes. So that was one of the dolls, too. So they had 3 different combinations and 5 different meat outfits. So that's really interesting. So that's the Somina doll. Now, when Pleasant Rowland actually came to Germany, she came to Germany in 1984. She saw one of these Romina dolls in a store. I'm just gonna say maybe it was number 5. So she saw one of these dolls in the store and she was like, this is really cute. I like this. I want to make this into the American Girl doll. So she went to the Ghost Factory and she struck a deal with them. And it took a little bit of time. So at the time, I think that's why the dolls were so, that's why they kept changing the meat outfits and they made the dolls limited edition, because they had a contract with Pleasant Rowland and they didn't have a lot of time to make the Romina dolls because they had that contract pending that they were going to eventually sell the mold. So they didn't have a lot of time to actually make these dolls. So they turned out a whole ton of them. So they turned out a whole bunch of different ones because they didn't really have a lot of time to actually make them, because they had a contract with Pleasant Rowland in the works at the time when they were manufacturing the dolls. So yeah. So the Somina dolls, like I said, were very limited edition. The Somina dolls, we know for a fact they only made 100 of each doll. So we know for a fact that there's only 100 of each Somina doll ever made. And that is really, really interesting, because right around after the first batch of Somina dolls were made, so after the first 100 of each doll was made, the deal was actually finalized with Pleasant Rowland, and she got the rights to make the American Girl. So once she got the rights to make the American Girl, the Goats Factory decided to release the dolls that had the Somina mold. They decided to re-release those dolls with the Starshine face mold. So yeah. Oh, careful, Maddie. Come on. Sit on up. Sorry, you guys. My dolls are falling over. There we go. Open your eyes. Okay, sorry about that. My dolls are starting to fall over. But yeah. So what happened was, with the Somina dolls, they discontinued the face mold for them, and they just released them with a new face mold. The Starshine face mold, and those dolls are just considered Starshine dolls, with Somina meats, which is weird. But yeah, that's just what collectors consider those dolls as. The later dolls that have the Somina meats, but the Starshine faces, they just consider those Starshine dolls with Somina meats or something like that. So those exist too. Those were made in 1985 as well. So that is basically the history of the Romina dolls. And around, let me think, 1989 is when we get into the Celine doll. So the Celine dolls, like I said, are the prototypes of Addie. So those dolls are from 1989. Those dolls are the prototypes of Addie. So those came out in 1989. And I'm not entirely sure when Pleasant bought the rights to those molds, but it must have been around that time because, as far as we know, they only made 6 dolls with the Celine face mold, and then they discontinued it. So sometime around in the early 90s, we think that Pleasant made another trip to the Goats factory, saw the Celine mold, said, hey, I'd like something similar to that for Addie. And they started working on that for her doll. And then in 1993, the Goats factory came out with the Iris mold. Now the Iris mold, as you guys can tell, is an Asian doll mold. It's very cute. This doll has red hair and brown eyes, so at the time it may have not been considered an Asian doll mold, but when Pleasant Rowland saw it, she thought, hey, this looks like an Asian doll to me. So I think that she made another trip to the Goats factory in 1993, saw this doll, and was like, hey, this is cute. Let's make this one into number 4. So they got to work on number 4, and number 4 came out in 1995. So yeah. So this doll was, I think, the prototype for number 4. So yeah. So I think Pleasant Rowland also bought the rights to the Iris mold, because we never see any more of the Iris mold made by Goats anymore. Same with the Celine. So we never see any more of these dolls. And sometime in the early I would say in the early 80s, I'm sorry, sometime in the early 80s they actually created the Bitty Baby mold. I think it was sometime in the early 80s they developed the Bitty Baby mold. I'm not entirely sure when, maybe 84. They developed the Bitty Baby mold, and they produced a lot of Bitty Baby dolls for the Goats Doll Company. And as you guys know, around, I would say in 1989, I think, Pleasant Rowland made a trip to Germany. I think it was probably around the same time as she saw the Celine doll when she was planning Addie. She probably saw this doll and was like, hey, I want to make a baby doll line for the American Girl, and I want this mold. And they sold her this mold. So, yeah. And this mold became Bitty Baby, or Our New Baby. Originally, they were called Our New Baby under American Girl. So, and originally they had the hands facing up. And later on, the hands are facing down. But as you can see, this doll was one of the original Bitty Babies. But this doll is a Goats doll that inspired the Bitty Baby. So Pleasant Rowland saw one of these and was like, hey, we should make this into a doll line for the American Girl. So she bought the rights to this doll as well, because Goats no longer uses this mold. So she did buy the rights to this doll as well. So that is all the information I have about the prototypes and how they were purchased, and around the time that I think Pleasant Rowland made the deals. I don't know if all this information is 100% accurate, but I would think it is. I just know when the dolls actually came out, and I know when the dolls from Goats came out, and I know when the doll from American Girl came out, so I know that sometime in the middle, Pleasant Rowland must have made a deal somewhere in the middle to acquire these molds to make the dolls. So I know that must have happened somewhere in the middle. So I don't know the exact date when she acquired the molds. to make the dolls. But I do know that she did acquire the molds for all of these dolls from the Ghost Company. So yeah. And I will see you guys next time. I hope this has been very informative. I really hope so, because my guess it was somewhere in between that she acquired the rights to the molds. Like, I know she acquired the rights to the molds for the American Girls sometime in 1985, because she would have had to got the rights to the molds before the dolls came out in 1986. So she would have sometime in 1985 have gotten the rights to the American Girls classic mold. As far as Celine, it could have been anytime in the early 90s. For Addie, sometime in the early 90s, anywhere from 1990 to 1992, sometime around that time, she probably acquired the rights to make Addie. And sometime, I would say in 1994, she acquired the rights to make number 4. And for the Bitty Baby, I would say it would be sometime in the sometime in the late 80s, I would say, for Bitty Baby, because I think Bitty Baby came out in 1990. So I think sometime in the early 80s, she got the rights to make Our New Baby. I think it's actually Our New Baby. Sorry, Bitty Baby's 1993, I think. Our New Baby was 1990. So Our New Baby, she got the rights to make Our New Baby, I think, sometime in the early 80s. So, sometime in the late 80s. Sorry, I meant late 80s. So sometime in the late 80s, she got the rights to make these. So sometime in the late 80s, she got the rights to make these dolls. Sometime in the late 80s. I would say anywhere between, it might have been any time between 1985 and 1989, but I don't think it was 85. I think it was sometime later. So I'm thinking she negotiated the rights for the American Girls first, and then she negotiated the rights for the Bitty Baby, and then Addie, and then number 4. I think that's the order that she did it in. I'm not 100% sure, though. I really hope this video has been helpful, but I will see you guys later, and make sure to like and subscribe, and hopefully if I ever do an interview with Pleasant Rollins, she actually knows the exact years that she made the deals for the molds, because I really want to know that. I would actually want to know what years she actually made the deals for the molds, because that would be really interesting for me to know. Because I think I have a good idea about when she bought the molds, but I don't know the exact years for some of them. So I only know the exact years for the American Girls and for the number 4. I don't know the exact year for Bitty Baby and Celine. So we will see. And I will see you guys next time. Bye now.